Welcome back, guys. We're going to be getting back to the car now to look at installing some aftermarket gauges. I've got a boost pressure gauge and a AFR gauge. So there's really three things about installing an aftermarket gauge. It's number one, where are you going to put it? Number two, how are you going to wire it? And number three, how's it get installed in the engine bay? So for number one, which we're going to start with, it's easy because I have this radio delete plate that I put in so I can have my little custom flappy switches. And we're going to have enough room for one gauge and two gauges. So we're going to mark this up. I'm going to draw around the outside so that I have a good idea of what the actual visible face is, because it's different on the back where it has screws that attach into this center console bezel, or tombstone as it's known in the Miata world. And I also have this center console delete. I'll pull back the carpeting here and show you how this locks in. There's basically just a screw down here, and it just attaches to the stock location for that screw. So that makes it super easy to pull this out. So this comes out. We have to kind of reach back here and finagle the hazard switch, but we're going to pull that out, take out this piece, and I've got a 52mm hole saw, and we're going to drill out some holes. So we've taken the plate out of the car, and I'm using the ring screws on the back that hold the bezel, the gauge in place on the plate, to use this kind of like a template. And you can see my line where I drew the outline of where the face is actually exposed, and then the screws are behind. The screw hole right there and right there are actually behind and go into the plastic of the center console. So I'm just kind of lining this up, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mark it and then find a center and then get that to be equal on the other side. All right, let me get my things marked. I use my little center punch tool to get that in there. I did the whole circle just to make sure it was okay on that side, and then just drew a line across flat, and then measured from the top and the bottom just to make sure, and then out from the side line right here that's visible, so it's the same distance on this side as it is on this side. So that should be right in the right place. Got my hole saw attached to the drill and the plate in the vise, and drill out those holes. All right, got one down. All right, let's try for a test fit. Put this right through here, and bam, perfect. Haven't decided actually which side I want to put it on. Probably the AFR on the closer side. Might depend on the viewing angle though. This is going to be tilted back a little bit, so it should be. These gauges are kind of deep. If you notice, they go in, a little ways from the bezel. So for best viewing, you kind of need it to tilt back. So hopefully this will be okay. But it's a good fit. Okay, moving on to step 2, wiring. So the main thing that it needs is power, obviously, but there's two kinds of power. Actually, technically 3 kinds of power. What we need is a switched 12-volt source, and then also a 12-volt source that's switched on when you turn on your lights, so that it knows when the lights are on. This is a very standard and simple gauge set, and basically it doesn't do the dimming stuff. So basically it just needs to know when the 12 volts is switched on, when the lights are on. So basically you are going to attach to that. Now this car has had an aftermarket radio installed, so it's got this kind of jumble mess with these crimp-on things, which I hate. And however, it does make it a little easier to see what's what we're going to have to just verify with our voltmeter what's what. But basically this one's labeled ground, and in fact it does go to a little chassis point behind and deep in the dark depths there. You can't really see, but it bolts into the chassis well to the dashboard frame. So that's our ground. Power is probably going to be this, I have a feeling it's this yellow one, this big yellow one right here. So we're just going to take that, not past the crimp. There's no reason for that to do that. We're just going to take it from where the yellow goes into, which is this blue and with a black stripe. So if you have a Miata wiring guide, that can probably help. But you don't really need one. You can usually figure this kind of stuff out with a little bit of probing. And we're going to do that. Now, I do have a wiring guide, and I believe this is correct. This red and white is what drives the light. The fact that the lights are on, the headlights are on, and the interior should be lit. So then that goes to this black and white guy right there. So basically, both grounds are going to go to the ground, and then we're going to have the illumination power go here, and then the main power go here. So we're going to test that out real quick with our voltmeter just to make sure everything is correct. All right, so as I suspected, that yellow is indeed switch power. If we got the key right there, if we turn it off, nothing, turn it back on, boom, it's back. And then now we just need to figure out now we're going to check the other wire to confirm that it's the lights. Okay, nope. I must have misremembered. It's not red and white, it's red and black. It's this little guy right here. It will give me 11 or something volts when I flip on these gauges from Rev Limiter never get old. When I flip on the lights. So that's what we're going to connect to for that piece, for the dash illumination, and we can get these wired up. Okay, before we go any farther, now that we've tested everything, we can disconnect the negative battery terminal. While we're in here soldering, we don't want to have any kind of shorts or anything like that with accidentally and burn out our brand new gauges. That would be bad. And for that, I just use a little tin with a flexible head, and I can get back there and do it. That's the only thing that's annoying about Miatas is the negative battery terminals in the back, and it's annoying. But anyway, take that off first. All right, so over here on the bench, what we've done is these are little inverters for the dash lighting, and what we've done is we tied these whites together, which are for power, and then we tied all the grounds together, not only for the lighting but for the main units. And since I'm doing 2 gauges at the same time, all of it goes together. You can see here in the instructions, tie the lighting wires together. It's the same instructions for every type, temperature, pressure, voltage, and then there's another instruction thing for the AFR, and it's the same deal. So then the red wire is going to be going to the switch 12 volts, and this power, all this white wire stuff, is going to be going to our dash lighting source. So when the lights turn on, your headlights are on, then this is going to be live. Now the nice thing about this is you do not need to do this with the gauge actually physically connected. You can finish up all your soldering, verify your connections without it being connected, and then it just has these little plug and play, nice little plugs right there. So you can plug all that together. And then down here is the main power. So we're going to get that. We're going to slide some heat shrink on, and we'll get to soldering. Now I'll show you what I did here with the power. This is to my switch 12 volts, and so I like to solder in the car rather than using these butt connectors. It just makes for a cleaner install. And it's I don't know. I just think it's better. When done right, soldering is, a lot of people say you shouldn't solder in automotive applications because the solder can crack. Well, that's only if it's a crappy solder. Soldering is used by NASA on the space shuttle. So what you do is slide some heat shrink. This is a little bit bigger because it goes over 2 wires and this connection. But if you do what's called a what is it? Western Union thing, lineman splice or whatever, lineman splice. Let's just go with that. Where you kind of make an X, you twist it across from each other. It makes a good, not only physical connection, but also a good mechanical connection, if I can get it to focus on that. And this joint will then be stronger than the rest of the wire when done correctly. So we're going to melt the solder into it to complete the connection. It's going to fully wet out, which means that it's going to actually weld into the base metal. That's how a proper solder is done. So we'll see what that looks like. I can't hold it, unfortunately, in the car with the and do the soldering. So I'll show you the final result. All right, and there you have it. I probably kept the iron on there a little bit too long because I singed the. This is a little shiny down here, but I want to make sure it wetted out correctly. So it's going to flow into it. The proper way to do this is you heat up the wire itself, and then melt the solder into the wire. It's not going to melt into the soldering iron. You'll never get a good join that way. Now I can pull on this as hard as I want, and this joint is not coming apart. So now that I've got that, I can slide up my little heat shrink and give it a little hit with a lighter or something like that to get it to shrink up, and then you can see how neat that's going to look at the end. Right. All right, this is what it looks like. This is power, dash lighting power, everything ground. And this was just like this, and I think I'll tape this off to make sure it doesn't hit anything. I think it's just a speaker wire, basically. So no big deal, but might as well. So anyway, this is all hooked up. So basically we've got all these plugs, which we can then plug back into the gauges. Kind of push this out back, kind of neaten it up maybe. And we should be all set. Get the little switches put back, and then we can try testing out. We can plug it in and actually test out the gauge before we get to step 3, which is putting the sensors into the engine bay. Alright, this is what it looks like. This is power, dash lighting power, everything ground. So anyway, this is all hooked up. So basically we've got all these plugs, which we can then plug back into the gauges. Kind of push this out back, kind of neaten it up maybe. And we should be all set. Get the little switches put back, and then we can try testing out. We can plug it in and actually test out the gauge before we get to step 3, which is putting the sensors into the engine bay. All right, I've got this in the key on position here, and this is the boost gauge and vacuum gauge, and then this is the AFR. Obviously the AFR is not hooked up to anything. However, I did hook up, just sitting here, this is a digital gauge, so it's to this digital sensor, which is going to reside in the engine bay, and we're going to hook it up to some vacuum line. But for now, I just have it tapped into this MPT little fitting, and just to try it out. And indeed, if I can hold this, if I blow into this, it goes up. If I suck into it, it will go down. So, looks to be working. And then if we flip on the lights, we have lighting. There we go. All right, so let's see what we got. So in the engine bay for this boost sensor, we've got this little free port that I've already hooked up, actually. I haven't cut this down. This is like way too long, but I haven't decided exactly where I'm going to put it. Probably towards the back here, away from the heat. Maybe zip tie it in there, but honestly, it doesn't matter how long this is. The pressure is going to be the pressure, maybe a little delay, but you're not going to be able to notice it. I'm using this one because my gauge is a stepper gauge, not an analog gauge where you're piping this all the way, the pressure line all the way into the engine compartment and stuff like that. So this point, because it's right next to the throttle body, it kind of goes up and down a lot, so it's a little bit noisy in here. But honestly, for a stepper thing, I think it's not going to matter that much. So another possible place is right here in the middle of the plenum, right here, or you can do back here, back by where the AFR is connected. So the AFR I'm not going to touch because I want it to be the only thing connecting to my ECU when I put in the Mega Squirt. That's going to be where I'm going to pipe it in. It's back there. And then, so I'm either going to do here or I can tee it off. The gauge came with a little T adapter, so you don't even have to go buy that. It's just included. And then the wiring itself, which they give you a good amount here, which in a Miata is overkill, is going to go through, you can see that little gray thing. That's my impromptu grommet. And I've got a couple of grommets that I can try to use to see what it is. But this is a little square hole. I'll get this out in a second so you can see. But what I did was I removed the cruise control module, and it left this little hole once you get rid of the cruise control cable that connects to the back of the accelerator pedal. So I just filled it with a little fuel line and then RTV'd it up and stuff like that so that it would be filled in. So I'm going to take that out, and then we'll see about feeding this little wire through to the cabin. Okay, got that in place. I can always move it. Plenty of space. Got this routed kind of underneath the CV, and it's not perfect because there's lots of extra hose, but whatever. This will be good for now. And then we've got this routed around behind. May do one more zip tie to just keep this up. So it's off of those hoses, which get a little hot, and then right into here, which I'm going to put the grommet on. And where did my grommet go? Oh, here it is. So we've cut this into like a little C pattern, little opening that I can put this through, since the little head of the plug would not go through there, but that will nevertheless protect it from any kind of vibrations and stuff that, you know, could cut the wire against the firewall. So we'll put that on. All right, and there we go. It's reasonably tight. I might seal it a little bit more with some RTV or something like that, but it is reasonably tight. And then feeds into the compartment down here. And you want to get it fed so that it's over the steering column, on top of the steering column, so that you can feed it in right here, back behind, where it's going to meet up with its little plug on the gauge. All right. And just look at that. Nice. Once I get the AFR hooked up, freaking sweet. And so again, as I mentioned before in the unboxing, I did this, well, let's turn it off to talk. I did this gauge, custom gauge set so that I could match, if you see the little tick marks there, matches the little tick marks here throughout the little thing. And oh, let's get the lights. Nice. LEDs on this are just a little blue for some reason instead of bright white, but they're, you know, they look pretty good. Both of these gauges come with a settable warning light. That's what this button is for. You can set a warning light when like your AFR is leaning out or getting way too rich. You can set it. It can do dual warning, like high and low. Same with your boost. If your boost is too high, negative vacuum is, there's no point. But for boost, I'm probably going to run this very low to start. Once I get the turbo in, so that's perfect. I just went to 20. They also go to 30 or different ranges, and I also wanted the vacuum. So they have different options on the website if you go check it out. Yeah, you can customize it to be whatever you need it to be. I decided to go with full analog. And turn this off so the battery doesn't die. And but yeah, this is what it looks like.